Jake Sinclair stared at the tangled mess of his latest creation. It was 2 a.m., and his small New York City apartment was engulfed in shimmering strands of spider silk, stretching from the ceiling to the floor, from the walls to the furniture. The soft glow of his desk lamp highlighted the intricate patterns, making the webbing look almost magical. What was once a hobby had become an all-consuming obsession. Every free moment was spent weaving, perfecting his art, pushing the boundaries of his unique ability. Jake leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched into his features. His fingers were stained with the silken threads, a testament to countless sleepless nights. He glanced at his phone, hoping for a distraction. Instead, his ex-girlfriend Maya's name flashed on the screen with a new message notification. "Jake, are you still making your spider art or whatever? The world is literally on fire. Call me if you need help, because I swear if I see one more web of yours in my feed, I'm blocking you." He couldn't help but chuckle. Maya had always been the practical one, the voice of reason in their relationship. Her message was classic Maya, blunt, no nonsense, and slightly irritated. He missed her, despite the distance that had grown between them. But his work consumed him, leaving little room for anything else. As Jake turned his attention back to the web, something strange caught his eye. The silk seemed to move on its own, undulating gently as if a breeze was passing through. He rubbed his eyes, certain he was imagining things. But no, the threads continued their subtle dance, tightening and loosening in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. Curiosity piqued, Jake reached out to touch one of the strands. The moment his fingers made contact, a sharp pain shot through his hand, making him jerk back. His skin tingled, and he felt an inexplicable sensation crawling beneath his skin, spreading from his hand to his entire body. Panic surged through him as he tried to pull away, but the silk had latched onto his skin, entwining itself with his very being. "Not now," he muttered, trying to focus. He had encountered strange anomalies before, but nothing like this. The web wasn't just a passive creation, it was reacting, almost as if it had a mind of its own. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. Jake's vision blurred, and dizziness took hold, making it hard to stay upright. He staggered to his feet, attempting to sever the threads that bound him. Each cut he made only seemed to make the web more aggressive, tightening its grip and pulling him deeper into a state of disorientation. In the midst of his struggle, a shadow loomed behind him. Jake turned to see Maya standing in the doorway, her expression a mix of concern and frustration. "What the hell did you do now, Jake?" she demanded, stepping into the room despite the late hour. Jake tried to speak, but his throat felt tight, his words coming out as garbled sounds. "Maya, it's the webs, something's wrong." Maya approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the tangled silk. "You've been isolating yourself for months, Jake. Maybe it's time to take a break." Before Jake could respond, the silk began to glow faintly, pulsating with an otherworldly energy. The room seemed to warp around him, the walls stretching and bending in unnatural ways. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Maya reached out to touch his shoulder, but as she did, the web reacted violently, slamming her back against the wall with a force that sent her sprawling. She struggled to regain her footing, eyes wide with fear. "Jake, you need to stop," she said urgently. "This isn't just about your art anymore. Whatever's happening, it's dangerous." Jake's mind raced, trying to comprehend the situation. His ability to produce and control spider silk had been a gift, a way to channel his creativity and passion. But now, it felt like a curse, something beyond his control. As he looked down at his hands, he realized with horror that the silk wasn't just confined to his apartment. It was spreading, seeping out through every crack and crevice, intertwining with the very fabric of his life. He could feel connections forming, threads extending outwards, linking him to the outside world in ways he hadn't intended. Maya scrambled to her feet, shaking off the silk that clung to her clothes. "We need to get out of here," she insisted. "Now." Jake nodded weakly, feeling the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had always known his abilities set him apart, but he never imagined they could have such far-reaching consequences. The parasitic organism that had latched onto his webs was spreading, using his very power to create a network that could extend globally. They hurried out of the apartment, the city lights blurring as Jake struggled to keep his balance. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by a tense stillness. Jake could feel the silk extending beyond his reach, connecting to unseen points across the city, each thread carrying the parasite further afield. As they made their way through the streets, they noticed subtle changes. People walked with a vacant look in their eyes, their movements stiff and robotic. Some were engaged in mindless activities, while others exhibited sudden bursts of aggression, attacking anyone in their path. Maya's scientific mind raced to understand what was happening. "It's a parasite," she concluded, her voice trembling. "But not like anything we've seen before. It uses the silk to spread, to control its hosts. If we don't stop it, it'll be too late." Jake's heart sank. He had always been proud of his ability to create webs that served so many purposes, building structures, conducting research, even helping with environmental projects. But now, his gift was the very thing threatening humanity. "We need to sever the connections," Maya continued, urgency in her tone. "Destroy every thread, every web you've created. It's the only way to stop it from spreading." Jake looked around, realizing the enormity of the task. The web network was vast, stretching far beyond what he had ever imagined. Cutting one thread might not be enough. He needed to eliminate every connection to ensure the parasite couldn't find another host. But how? Each thread was connected to his nervous system, a part of him that he couldn't simply disconnect without dire consequences. The process would be excruciating, possibly fatal. Yet, it was the only way to save the world. Maya placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a semblance of comfort. "We'll find a way together. You're not alone in this." Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He glanced back at his apartment, the source of the nightmare he now faced. The webs shimmered ominously, a testament to his unintended creation. With Maya by his side, he knew he had to make the ultimate sacrifice. As they moved forward, the streets around them seemed to react, the silk threads pulsating with life, resisting their attempts to cut through. The parasite was fighting back, using Jake's abilities against him, trying to keep the web intact. They reached a central hub, a sprawling network node where countless threads converged. It was here that Jake would have to make the hardest decision of his life. Maya looked to him, determination in her eyes. "This is it. We have to cut it here, now." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on him. He raised his hands, channeling all his strength into severing the threads. The silk resisted, pulling him back, trying to keep him connected. Pain surged through his body as he struggled, every nerve ending alight with agony. Maya quickly joined in, assisting him in the process. Together, they worked to dismantle the web, each cut bringing them closer to freedom but also closer to potential disaster. The parasite fought with every fiber of its being, determined to keep the network alive. As the final threads fell away, a silence settled over the city. The oppressive hum that had filled the air was gone, replaced by a tentative calm. Jake collapsed, his body drained from the effort, while Maya supported him, ensuring he didn't fall. They looked around, seeing the immediate area devoid of the sinister webbing. People who had been under the parasite's influence began to regain their senses, shaking off the fog that had clouded their minds. Relief washed over Jake, but it was tempered by the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Maya helped him to his feet, her grip firm and reassuring. "We did it, for now. But we need to find out where this parasite came from and how to ensure it doesn't return." Jake nodded, still feeling the lingering effects of severing the web. He knew this was just the beginning of a much larger battle, a fight to save humanity from an invisible threat that had exploited his very gift. As they stood amidst the remnants of the shattered web, Jake couldn't help but wonder how his passion for spider silk had led to such a catastrophe. He had always believed in the potential of his abilities to do good, but now he was faced with the harsh reality that sometimes, even the best intentions can unleash unforeseen horrors. With Maya by his side, he vowed to make things right, to uncover the truth behind the parasite and prevent any future invasions. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over, and that the true challenge was only just beginning. Jake Sinclair leaned heavily against Maya as they stood amidst the remnants of the shattered web. The city around them was beginning to stir, the eerie calm of the aftermath settling in as people slowly regained their senses. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the faint glow of emergency lights cast long shadows on the streets. Despite the immediate threat being subdued, the air was thick with tension and uncertainty. Maya glanced around, her analytical mind already racing through possibilities. "We need to figure out where this parasite came from," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If it's capable of spreading so quickly, there's a chance it could adapt or find another way to propagate." Jake nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "I agree. But where do we even start? This thing, it's unlike anything I've ever seen." They began to move through the city, avoiding the areas still affected by the parasite. As they walked, Jake couldn't help but notice the subtle signs of the invasion's impact. Graffiti-like patterns of webbing still clung to walls and storefronts, remnants of the parasite's presence. In some places, the silk had disintegrated, leaving behind only the faintest trace of its existence. Their first stop was Jake's old laboratory, a modest space nestled in the heart of Manhattan's scientific district. It had been abandoned for years, ever since Jake left his position to pursue his web-weaving obsession. The lab was cluttered with forgotten experiments and dust-covered equipment, a stark contrast to the pristine research facility it once was. Maya led the way, her keen eyes scanning the room for any clues. "If there's any information on the parasite, it might be here," she suggested. "Your work with spider silk might have unintentionally created the perfect environment for it to thrive." Jake approached his old workstation, running a hand over the smooth surface. Memories flooded back, late nights spent perfecting the silk's tensile strength, experiments to enhance its durability, and the thrill of discovery that had driven him to push boundaries. But none of that had prepared him for the nightmare unfolding now. He pulled open a drawer, rummaging through papers and notebooks until he found a folder labeled Silk Enhancement Project. Inside were detailed schematics, notes on the biochemical properties of the silk, and logs of his experiments. Maya began flipping through the pages, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a section titled Genetic Modification Attempts. "You were trying to incorporate synthetic genes to make the silk more versatile. Do you think that could have played a role in attracting or even creating this parasite?" Jake frowned, recalling the ambitious nature of his experiments. "It's possible. I was pushing the limits of what spider silk could do, but I never intended for it to have these capabilities. Maybe the modifications made the silk more susceptible to hosting other organisms." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "That could explain why the parasite latched onto your web so effectively. It found a perfect niche within the enhanced silk network." As they delved deeper into the research, a pattern began to emerge. Jake's modifications had inadvertently created a self-sustaining, highly interconnected web system that the parasite could exploit. The parasite itself was nowhere to be found in his notes, suggesting it was either introduced from an external source or evolved from an unknown mutation. "Do you think it could be alien?" Jake asked, the thought unsettling him. Maya shook her head. "I don't know, but we can't rule anything out at this point. We need to conduct a thorough analysis of the parasite's biology to understand its origins and weaknesses." They spent the next few hours meticulously cataloging every detail of Jake's experiments, searching for any hint of what could have led to the parasite's emergence. As dawn began to break, casting a pale light through the lab's windows, Maya finally leaned back, exhaustion evident in her posture. "I think we need to bring in more resources," she concluded. "This is beyond our current capabilities. We should reach out to other scientists, maybe even the government." Jake hesitated. "I don't know if I can trust them." What if they see me as the source of the problem? Maya placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We don't have a choice. If we don't address this now, the parasite could adapt and find another way to spread. We need all the help we can get. Reluctantly, Jake agreed. They gathered the necessary data and prepared to leave the lab, but before they could step outside, an urgent message blinked onto Jake's phone screen. It was from an unknown number, and the subject line simply read, "You can't escape." Jake's heart raced as he opened the message. It contained only a short video clip barely a minute long showing a dense network of webs spreading rapidly across various global landmarks. The footage was grainy, but the message was clear. The parasite was far from being contained. Maya watched the video with a grim expression. This isn't just happening here. It's a global crisis. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. We need to move fast. Every second counts. They quickly made their way to a secure location Maya had set up in her own home, a place equipped with advanced scientific equipment and communication tools. Here, they could analyze the data more thoroughly and coordinate with other experts. As they settled into their makeshift lab, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The memory of the parasite's invasive reach was unsettling, and he couldn't help but wonder if it was still lurking, waiting for another opportunity to strike. Maya began connecting her computer to Jake's research data, pulling up simulations and models that could help them understand the parasite's behavior. If we can map out its growth patterns, we might be able to predict where it will spread next and find a way to halt it. Jake nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. What if we can create a counter-silk? Something that disrupts the parasite's network? Maya considered the idea. It's worth exploring. If we can modify the silk to be incompatible with the parasite, we might be able to stop its spread. But we'll need to understand its biology first. They spent the next several days immersed in their work, collaborating with scientists from around the world who joined their effort. The situation was dire. Webs were appearing in cities across the globe, each one acting as a conduit for the parasite's relentless expansion. Panic was spreading alongside the webs, with governments struggling to maintain order and provide aid. Jake and Maya focused on dissecting the parasite's structure, analyzing samples they managed to extract from the affected areas. It was a painstaking process, requiring patience and precision. Slowly, they began to piece together the organism's capabilities, its rapid adaptability, its ability to manipulate hosts, and its reliance on the silk network for transportation and communication. One evening, after a particularly long day, Maya leaned back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. We've made progress, but it's slow. The parasite's ability to evolve is making it hard to pin down its weaknesses. Jake stared at the data on his screen, frustration evident in his demeanor. There has to be something we can exploit. Every organism has a weakness. Maya smiled faintly, appreciating his determination. I believe it. We'll find it, Jake. We have to. As the weeks passed, their collaboration bore fruit. They discovered that the parasite was highly dependent on the silk's unique biochemical composition. By altering certain properties of the silk, they could disrupt the parasite's ability to thrive and spread. This breakthrough led them to develop a prototype for the counter-silk, a modified version that could neutralize the parasite's influence. Excitement surged through them as they prepared to test their solution. This could work, Jake said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. If we can distribute this counter-silk effectively, we might be able to stop the spread. Maya nodded, her confidence growing. We'll need to coordinate with authorities to implement this on a large scale. It's a massive undertaking, but it's our best shot. Their plan involved deploying the counter-silk in areas already affected by the parasite, effectively creating a barrier that the organism couldn't penetrate. Additionally, they needed to ensure that new webs being formed were immediately treated with the counter-silk to prevent further spread. As they worked tirelessly to refine the counter-silk, Jake and Maya grew closer, their shared mission strengthening their bond. The pressure of the crisis weighed heavily on them, but their determination to save humanity kept them going. One night, as they reviewed the final tests, an urgent message came through their secure communication channel. It was from an international coalition of scientists and military leaders coordinating the global response. Progress update required, the message read. Please report your latest findings and readiness to deploy the counter-Silk. Jake and Maya exchanged a determined glance before Jake began typing their report, detailing their discoveries and the development of the counter-Silk. Within hours, teams were dispatched to key locations around the world, armed with the necessary materials and instructions to implement the solution. The deployment was a coordinated effort, with drones distributing the counter-Silk over affected areas and teams on the ground applying it directly to existing webs. It was a race against time, with every passing hour critical to preventing the parasite's unchecked expansion. As the days turned into weeks, the impact of their efforts became evident. Webs that had once spread like wildfire began to reseed, their growth stunted by the counter-Silk. Infected individuals started to recover as the parasite's hold weakened, their minds clearing from the organism's manipulative influence. However, the victory was not without its challenges. The parasite had proven to be a formidable adversary, adapting to their countermeasures in unexpected ways. New strains emerged, each one more resilient than the last, forcing Jake and Maya to continually refine their approach. One particularly harrowing incident occurred when a major web formation in Tokyo resisted the initial deployment of the counter-Silk. The parasite had evolved to mimic human neural pathways more closely, making it harder to disrupt without causing collateral damage to the hosts. Jake and Maya, along with their international counterparts, brainstormed solutions late into the night. It was Maya who proposed a radical idea using a combination of thermal energy and the counter-Silk to create a controlled environment where the parasite couldn't survive. The plan was risky but showed promise. They quickly mobilized the necessary resources, and within days, the operation was underway. The controlled thermal waves, combined with the counter-Silk's neutralizing properties, successfully eradicated the resistant strain, marking a significant milestone in their fight. As the crisis began to wane, Jake and Maya found themselves hailed as heroes, their names synonymous with the global effort to combat the invasion. Yet, amidst the accolades, they remained focused on ensuring that the parasite could never return. One evening, as they stood on the rooftop of Maya's home, overlooking a city slowly returning to normalcy, Jake took a deep breath, feeling a sense of accomplishment tempered by lingering uncertainty. "We did it, Maya. We actually did it." Maya smiled, her eyes reflecting the city lights below. "We did. But we need to stay vigilant. There are still questions left unanswered." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Like where it came from? And how it managed to spread so quickly?" Maya sighed, her gaze distant. "Exactly. We need to dig deeper, find out if this was an isolated incident or part of something larger." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden flicker of the sky above them. A faint, almost imperceptible web-like pattern began to form, weaving its way across the horizon. It was subtle, barely noticeable against the backdrop of the city, but it was enough to send a chill down their spines. Jake's eyes narrowed as he observed the emerging pattern. "Did you see that?" Maya followed his gaze, her expression darkening. "It's starting again." Panic surged through Jake. "But how? We thought we had it under control." Maya shook her head, her mind racing. "The parasite must have found a way to survive. Or maybe there's another strain we haven't identified yet." Determined not to let their hard-won victory slip away, they rushed back inside to their makeshift lab. Jake began analyzing the new web pattern, while Maya worked on cross-referencing it with their existing data. After hours of intense research, they made a startling discovery. The new webbing exhibited characteristics of both the original parasite and another, completely unknown organism. It was a hybrid fusion that suggested the parasite was evolving beyond their previous understanding. "This changes everything," Maya said, her voice heavy with concern. "The parasite isn't just adapting, it's merging with other life forms to create something entirely new." Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What does that mean for us? For the world? It means we're dealing with a much more complex threat, Maya replied. This hybrid form could be even more resilient and harder to combat. We need to find out what it's combining with and why. Their investigation led them to a startling revelation: the parasite had been spreading through various ecosystems, integrating with local flora and fauna to enhance its adaptability. This symbiotic relationship allowed it to thrive in diverse environments, making eradication even more challenging. As they delved deeper, Jake and Maya uncovered evidence that the parasite might not be a natural occurrence. Traces of advanced technology embedded within the webbing suggested a possible artificial origin. This raised unsettling questions about whether the parasite was a product of human experimentation gone wrong or something far more sinister. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, they reached out to global intelligence agencies and scientific institutions, pooling their resources and expertise. Together, they began piecing together the puzzle, tracing the parasite spread to various hotspots around the world. One such location was an abandoned research facility in Siberia, rumored to have been involved in clandestine genetic experiments. The facility had been shuttered years ago, but recent activity indicated that someone or something had returned. Jake and Maya, along with a team of trusted allies, embarked on a mission to investigate the facility. The journey was arduous, the harsh Siberian landscape posing numerous challenges. When they finally arrived, the abandoned building loomed ominously against the twilight sky, its windows dark and lifeless. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the remnants of past experiments. As they navigated the corridors, they discovered evidence of unauthorized genetic manipulation, specimens that had been tampered with in ways that defied conventional science. The lab was eerily quiet, the only sounds the distant drip of water and their own footsteps echoing through the halls. In the center of the facility, they found a containment chamber that had been hastily abandoned. Inside, remnants of the parasite's cells were scattered across the floor, mingling with traces of other organisms. It was clear that this was a site where the parasite had been experimented on, possibly to enhance its capabilities. Jake's heart pounded as he examined the evidence. This facility was trying to create something. Maybe they were trying to harness the parasite's abilities for their own purposes. Maya nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. If that's the case, the parasite might have escaped or been intentionally released. We need to find out who was behind this and why. Their investigation was cut short when an alarm blared, signaling an unauthorized breach. Shadows moved in the periphery of their vision, and a sense of dread filled the air. They had been discovered. Without warning, the room was plunged into darkness as the lights flickered and went out. Panic set in as they fumbled for their flashlights, the beams of light cutting through the gloom. Suddenly, tendrils of webbing snaked out from the walls, enveloping the team and immobilizing them. Jake struggled against the sticky strands, his mind racing to find a way out. It's the parasite, he realized. It's trying to take us. Maya fought alongside him, her scientific mind working furiously to find a weakness. We need to disrupt the webbing, use the counter-silk we've developed. But the parasite was relentless, its hybrid form adapting to their efforts in real time. Just as all hope seemed lost, Jake remembered the thermal energy solution they had used in Tokyo. Maya, the thermal disruptor. Use it now. Maya nodded, pulling out a portable device they had created to generate controlled thermal waves. She activated it, directing the heat towards the advancing webbing. The intense heat caused the silk to degrade rapidly, releasing them from the parasite's grasp. Breathing heavily, they regrouped and assessed the situation. The containment chamber was now a mess of broken equipment and scattered samples, but they had escaped. However, the encounter had confirmed their worst fears. The parasite was evolving, becoming more intelligent and adaptive with each passing day. Determined to stop it once and for all, Jake and Maya knew they had to find the source of the parasite's creation and eliminate it. Their journey led them to uncover a hidden network of facilities around the world, each one contributing to the parasite's development and dissemination. As they traveled from one location to another, they faced numerous challenges: hostile environments, aggressive hybrid organisms, and even betrayal from those who sought to exploit the parasite's potential for their own gain. Each step brought them closer to the truth but also deeper into danger. In one particularly harrowing encounter in the Amazon rainforest, they stumbled upon a hidden lab where the parasite had been combined with native insect species, creating swarms that could overwhelm entire ecosystems. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a testament to the parasite's relentless drive to evolve and dominate. Jake and Maya worked tirelessly to deploy their counter-silk, battling against time to contain each new outbreak. Along the way, they discovered that the parasite was not just a single entity but a collective intelligence, learning and adapting from every interaction. It was as if the parasite itself was becoming a global consciousness, seeking to integrate and control every aspect of the natural world. Their relentless pursuit took a toll on both of them. Jake's once vibrant passion for his work was now overshadowed by the weight of responsibility and the fear of failure. Maya, ever the pragmatist, struggled to balance her scientific pursuits with the emotional strain of witnessing the devastation caused by their creation. One night, as they camped in a secluded research outpost, Jake broke the silence that had settled between them. "Do you ever wonder if we could have done something differently? If we could have prevented this from happening?" Maya looked up from her work, her eyes reflecting the flickering campfire. "Every day. But dwelling on what could have been won't help us now. We need to focus on what we can do to stop it." Jake sighed, staring into the flames. "I just never imagined my obsession with spider silk would lead to this. I wanted to create something beautiful, something useful, not this." Maya reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We can't change the past, Jake. But we can control what we do next. We've come this far because of your abilities. Let's use them to fix this." Their bond deepened through shared hardship and unwavering determination. Together, they devised a plan to infiltrate the parasite's central hub, a massive, hidden facility believed to be the epicenter of its evolution. The mission was perilous, but it was their best chance to end the invasion once and for all. As they approached the facility, the scale of the operation became clear. Towering structures intertwined with vast networks of webbing stretched as far as the eye could see, pulsating with an eerie energy. It was the heart of the parasite's network, a living organism in its own right. Jake and Maya, along with their team, navigated the labyrinthine corridors, encountering increasingly complex and aggressive hybrid organisms. Each encounter tested their resolve, pushing them to their physical and mental limits. The parasite seemed to anticipate their every move, adapting its defenses to thwart their progress. Finally, they reached the central chamber, a colossal dome where the parasite's collective intelligence manifested as a swirling, luminescent mass. It was both mesmerizing and horrifying, a tangible representation of the global consciousness they had been fighting against. Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding. "This is it. We have to shut it down from the inside." Maya nodded, pulling out the final version of the counter-silk, now enhanced with additional properties to combat the parasite's hybrid forms. "I'll create a containment field. You focus on deploying the counter-silk." As Maya began weaving the containment field, Jake activated the device that would disperse the counter-silk into the parasite's core. The air crackled with energy as the two worked in tandem, their actions synchronized in a desperate bid to reclaim control. The parasite reacted immediately, its luminescent mass pulsating violently as it sensed the intrusion. Tendrils of webbing shot out, attempting to ensnare Jake and Maya, pulling them towards the heart of the organism. But the containment field held strong, providing a temporary shield against the parasite's onslaught. Jake focused all his energy on the device, feeling the strain as the counter-silk began to flow into the parasite's core. The room seemed to warp around them, the boundaries between reality and the organism's influence blurring as the battle intensified. Suddenly, a surge of energy knocked Jake off his feet, sending him crashing into the containment field. Maya quickly moved to his side, steadying him as the parasite's influence threatened to overwhelm them. "Stay focused, Jake. We can't give up now." Summoning every ounce of strength, Jake pushed through the pain and fear, channeling his abilities to enhance the countersilk's effectiveness. The device hummed with power, and the countersilk began to penetrate the parasite's core, disrupting its collective intelligence. The parasite resisted, its luminescent mass flickering erratically as it struggled to maintain control. But Jake and Maya's combined efforts proved too strong, and slowly, the parasite's hold began to weaken. The room filled with a blinding light as the organism's core destabilized, the webbing retracting and dissolving into nothingness. With one final surge, the parasite's core imploded, sending a shockwave through the facility. The webbing that had once connected every corner of the world disintegrated, the threat finally neutralized. Silence settled over the chamber, the oppressive presence of the parasite lifted at last. Jake and Maya stood amidst the ruins, their breaths heavy with exhaustion and relief. The battle was over, but the scars of the invasion would remain, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked obsession and the delicate balance between creation and destruction. As they made their way out of the facility, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon, Jake felt a sense of closure he hadn't thought possible. "It's done," he whispered, more to himself than to Maya. Maya smiled, her eyes shining with pride and hope. "Yes, it is. We've saved the world, Jake." They returned to a world slowly healing from the invasion, their names forever etched in history as the ones who stopped the spiderweb invasion. But for Jake, the journey was far from over. The faint twitch of a new web in his hand reminded him of the ever-present temptation of his abilities, a reminder that with great power came great responsibility. Determined to use his gift wisely, Jake vowed to work alongside Maya and other scientists to ensure that such a catastrophe could never happen again. Together, they embarked on a mission to educate and regulate the use of enhanced biological abilities, striving to find a balance between innovation and caution. In the quiet moments that followed, as they watched the sunrise over a city reborn, Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had learned the true cost of his obsession and the importance of connection, not through webs, but through trust, collaboration, and love. As the sun climbed higher, casting light on the remnants of their hard-fought battle, Jake turned to Maya, his voice filled with determination. "Let's make sure this never happens again." Maya nodded, her hand finding his. Together. And as they stood united, the world around them healing and rebuilding, Jake knew that the true victory was not just in defeating the parasite, but in the bonds they had forged and the lessons they had learned. The spiderweb invasion had tested them in ways they could never have imagined, but it had also brought out the best in them, proving that even in the darkest times, hope and resilience could weave a path to a brighter future.